Hi, my name is John Burge and I'm a Canadian composer, been living in Kingston for many years. And as a Kingstonian, I am absolutely thrilled with what's happened with the rebranded Kingston Chamber Choir that is now Isabel Voices. And all their concerts are in this beautiful Isabel Bader Centre for the Performing Arts where the sound is absolutely stunning. If you haven't heard one of their concerts this year, I would encourage you to attend. Especially if you haven't heard one of their concerts this year, you can actually come on March 17th. It's a Sunday at 2:30 p.m. and they're actually going to be performing A Piece of Mine. And in fact, I'm going to turn this over to Sadaf to talk about this piece because it wouldn't exist without Sadaf.
The piece is Flight 752 Elegies, and it's a 7-movement piece written for choir and santur with a solo soprano part and some percussion. It's around 30 minutes, and it's composed in memorial of the lost lives of passengers of the Ukrainian flight that was shut down by the Iranian Islamic government in 2020.
I can tell you right now that this will be a very moving performance, and it would be great to see as many people at the concert as possible. Sadaf Amini is a wonderful santur player who's been living in Kingston for a number of years, and I had the great pleasure of meeting her and getting to know her instrument in 2019, 2020. Took her out for lunch and said, I think your instrument sounds so beautiful, it would be great to work with string quartet. And she thought the idea of working with string quartet would be great. And I said, well, it's only going to be really great if we incorporate elements of improvisation in this piece. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the piece I wrote for her for string quartet and santur, which is called Shiraz. But what happened is during the fall of 2019, we were meeting every sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and I would play what the string quartet would do on the piano, and she would play her part, and we would improvise. And I really got to know about the santur. In fact, in my mind, I think I'm a pretty good santur player, but it's all in my mind. So as we were rehearsing for a premiere of Shiraz in March 2020, just sort of a couple days before our rehearsal in early January, January 8th, 2020, the Ukrainian air flight number PS 752 was shot down over Tehran. Many Canadians were on that flight. It was devastating for the Iranian-Canadian community. International news, it took a while for the Iranian government to fess up that they in fact shot it down. And of course, Sadaf was born in Iran. And this was really affecting her, like just greatly. And so we just, as we got together, we just discussed the idea that, well, perhaps we should create a piece that would resonate with this tragedy. So how do you put a piece together that is going to pay tribute and have a sense of honor and recognize a tragedy musically that is going to connect on a musical level and connect with any listeners? And of course, writing in the Farsi language, the mystical poet Rumi, a 12th century poet, has just some incredible verses. And so with Sadaf and I did some research, and I found 3 poems written by Rumi that recognize death in some way. And so I decided that, you could use numerology in a variety of ways in music. And it seemed to me that a 7-movement work would, immediately grab the idea of Flight 752 Elegies. But then what I made sure is that the even-numbered movements 2, 4, and 6, so there's sort of the element of 2 in there, were the movements with the Rumi text. And in fact, the middle movement, movement 4, is the movement with solo soprano, and it's the most optimistic of the texts. It's the one that Rumi's describing how the soul leaves the body first when someone dies, and wouldn't it be nice if the body could go along too? When you're dealing with a sense of loss and tragedy, the world stops, time stops, things just, they have a completely different meaning. And you can actually capture that musically by having someone play with another pattern and completely ignore the rhythm, like completely ignore the music. It just becomes, timeless. And if you choose the pitches correctly, it will all work together. So I decided that what I wanted to do, because in some ways words can't cover everything, I wrote just basically the same choral refrain, and it's just to the syllable on. It's just 8-part choir, gets somewhat dissonance. You can hear these lines move around, and then it just comes to a cadence. So we've got this refrain. And then on top of that, I actually have Sadaf improvise, although I have given some pitches, but again, her craft is improvisation. And the santur itself is always tuned to one scale. So as long as I have the choir stay within that one scale, things are going to work out. But Sadaf plays a group of 7 notes, then a group of 5 notes, and then a group of 2 notes. The 2-note grouping is always with a tremolo, and that's when you have the hammers play the same note very fast together. It sounds very much like the human voice with vibrato. In fact, that's why the santur is just such a beautiful instrument. But then, of course, what happens is that's the first refrain. So I've got the 3rd movement, 5th movement, and 7th movement. So the 3rd refrain, or the 3rd movement, 2nd refrain, I just have the santur play a group of 5 notes and then a group of 2 notes. And then in the 5th movement, or the 3rd refrain, the santur simply plays a group of 2 notes. And I got to say, all you're getting there is just the tremolo and a note. And every time the choir sings, I actually tell them to get slower. So they sing this slow refrain, and then every time it gets slower and slower, and I keep changing the endings. Till finally we get to the 7th movement, or the last refrain, and to, symbolize on a very, obvious level, but it is certainly profound in performance. I just asked Sadaf to sit there and not play anything while we finally hear the choir refrain straight through, without anything. And there is this loss because you set it up. And I got to tell you, when you get to the end, it's about 30 minutes long, and you don't have anything left. That's it.
So I started playing the santur when I was younger, around 12 years old. I started taking some private lessons, and then I was interested to learn more. I went to music school in Tehran, and then I went to university getting my bachelor degree in music performance. I chose santur because my father had one at home, and it was very interesting for me to learn it and play with it, some melodies that I knew at that time. Santur is an Iranian traditional musical instrument, and it's pretty known in Iran. It's very much close to the hammer dulcimer and coming from the same family. A very important part of the Iranian traditional Iranian music is improvisation, and a very big part of it is non-rhythmic improvisation, which is very strongly combined with lyrics and poems and singing. So after many years of practicing, the performers got to the point that learns all those frames of improvising. And as I said, like most of the improvisation is like for non-rhythmic music. And there are also some traditional or contemporary composed pieces that are being performed by the musicians. But when a musician gets to that degree, that has a couple of years of experience of playing the instrument, they get to the point that they start improvising. So this piece is different with the other pieces that I've played for santur because it's coming from another perspective. Someone who is not a santur performer and is a composer of mostly Western music and is looking at the santur from another angle. So it's very interesting for me to play this piece of music that someone else has composed for santur who's not a santur or Iranian musician. Normally when I improvise, I think about the moment that I'm in, the emotions that I have, or the purpose that I'm performing the music for. But in this piece, I also am very at the moment and thinking about what's going around me with the choir and other harmonies and other lines, and thinking about everything all together. It is a very beautiful and emotional piece and moving piece. It is very important for me to play the piece because part of me always wanted to contribute in these condolences and sympathize with the beloved one of those passengers. So it's deeply emotional and kind of satisfying for me to be able to contribute in this, like have a part and offer something to those people who lost their beloved one with no reason. And I think the audience also get the message, and it's like the topic that the piece is composed for is deeply moving and saddening, really. And also the piece itself is very moving. So as well as myself, I think the audience also are very affected and very moved by listening to the piece.